joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. Not going to lie, I think I had this individual's first appearance penciled in for, I don't know, 3-4 months from now, something like that. Back in the salad days when we were 5-1 and nothing was wrong with the world. But such is life, and such are the New York Knicks. So without further ado, welcome aboard Jonathan Wasserman of Bleacher Report. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, I know you're disappointed to speak to me this early in the year, but here we are.
You say that with a resignation of someone who could only be a Knicks fan, and that's what I love about you. You don't hide the fact that you do root for this team, which is unfortunate for you and me. Before we get into the draft stuff, I'll just ask, how close of attention have you been able to pay to them this year? I mean, have you watched some of the games?
Yeah, I mean, not like you, but I watched more Knicks basketball than any other NBA team. I've seen enough to know what's going on there.
Okay. I'll do a couple things on the current Knicks, who I know you spent a lot of time scouting, and then we'll get into some of the college guys. Let's start with something positive. RJ, I remember talking to you about RJ before the draft, and I think you were kind of right down the middle on him as far as the range of opinions. Are you like surprised by anything we're seeing? I feel like are we in like the 60th percentile outcome for him right now? 70th percentile? Like where do you see this falling as far as what he's been doing?
The fact that he's still 21, right?
Yeah, 21.
I mean, that to me, I mean, because he plays with such he comes off as such a veteran. Like he's so mature for his age. You really do forget that he's still 21, and that the fact that he can drop 46 points in the game. Obviously he goes through these stretches where he struggles, and I think some of it is mental. Yeah. But I think for a guy like him, the worries have started to fade about, coming out of Duke. I was like, all right, what's his go-to move? How well can he create his own shot in the half court? He doesn't really have like the typical James Harden like package of go-to moves. He kind of just improvises a lot. And so I think the fact that he could still drop 46 points with his style of play is encouraging.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, man, how many other perimeter or like, quote unquote perimeter guys can do that without really having any semblance of like a pull-up game? Which, we'll see if that comes along. Two other quick guys I want to get to are on the current roster. Cam Reddish. Remind me where you were on Cam coming into the draft, because I honestly don't remember.
I had him in the late lottery. I think I had him at number 7 overall. Kind of like where most teams had him, where you wanted to kind of overlook the horrible inefficiency he had at Duke. And it's like that upside, like long-term upside, like it never expires. Like I feel like in 5 years, we're still going to be like, he's still got star potential. You bought the shot making and the defensive tools, but you questioned how efficient he'd be inside the arc, consistently scoring.
Is there a part of you that still thinks that it might just be a matter of opportunities / situation for him? Or do you feel like, it's end of year 3, we've kind of not seen enough, but like we've seen enough to know what he's not going to be compared to like what some folks were saying, before the draft?
Yeah. I mean, like coming out of high school, he had the comparisons were T-Mac, right? And Paul George, and like those are obviously done. But I still think if he gets enough minutes and he could build some confidence and rhythm, because he's definitely one of those guys who needs that. Like he's not a guy you could just like, let him play 10 minutes a game, and if he plays poorly, pull him. He needs to build that confidence, and he really hasn't had that chance yet. So it's I'm not ready to like say that he's a total bust, but yeah, at the same time, the ceiling projections that we had in the beginning are gone. Yeah.
I think that's a fair way to say it. Last guy, just very briefly, is Quickly, who if you would have told me that Emmanuel Quickly was going to shoot under 33% from deep this year, I would have called you many names, and none of them nice. Do you think the shooting thing is like a blip? Do you feel like where were you on him coming out? And like, what has anything surprised you, this year from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had Quickly at 40. So already he's, I get an L for my evaluation on quickly because he's a rotation player for sure. I'm not buying the point guard stuff, although you do see those flashes where he creates and gets into the lane and makes things happen and throws up lobs and he can set up teammates. But I think his value is streak scoring and a guy who gets hot and he puts a lot of pressure on defenses. And I think that'll continue to be his calling card. But with that, you're going to get the cold streaks and the slumps. And I'm not, I know he's not shooting great from downtown. Would you say 33%? I do think that's kind of a blip. Like he's going to catch fire eventually and he's going to go through these streaks. But he's just one of those like lightning rod type players where, he's like he's a great player to put in when you're losing. But when you're winning, he might not be the right choice. But he's definitely a useful player to have on your team. And despite how frustrating he's been this year, I still think he's somebody that the Knicks should kind of value and keep on. I
hope they're listening to you. On more than just this. Okay, let's have some fun. So right now, as we speak, the Knicks are in, I believe, the 9th spot in the lottery. I think there's a feasible chance they move up to 8. Maybe they get to 7. Catching the good old Kangs, it might be tough. The Pacers, I don't know. The Pacers are looking a little frisky nowadays. We'll see. And you never know what the lottery odds are going to bring. So I kind of want to do a very big picture overview of the lottery and or even maybe even like the top 10. So the last big board that you put out, it was from about a couple weeks ago, a little bit less than a couple weeks ago. And I think you've been pretty consistent on this all year, which is that you still have Chet Holmgren as your number 1. Has that, let me first ask, has that changed since you put out that piece for Bleacher Report?
It hasn't changed, but I'd say Jabari is as close as he's ever been. And he's at least made me think about it a couple of times, particularly lately, about moving Jabari Smith to 1. But they're both very good. I mean, I have so few questions about both guys, but I think with Chet, I mean, nobody can do what he does. And he's got the ability to impact the game in more ways than anybody. And so to me, I still have Chet at number 1. So Chet Holmgren, for anybody who doesn't know, he's 7-foot shot blocking, shooting. I mean, he's let's just say it, he's a unicorn, right? Is that basically the selling point on him? Yeah. I mean, he's you don't see, I'm going to pull up his stats right now. And
I saw you tweeted the clip of him going full court with the ball and in transition and just like,
that was his 16th time doing that. I mean,
that's
he's
insane.
A 7-footer who is 16 for 20 converting baskets as the main lead initiator on fast breaks. I mean, aside from the coast to coast takes, which are fun and highlight worthy, I mean, he's blocking 3.5 shots in just 27 minutes. He's shooting 73% inside the arc. He's shooting 44% from downtown. He's a 75% free throw shooter, so you don't really have too many questions about whether the 3 ball is fluky or not. He's a plus passer for the position, and he's competitive as hell. Like, there's just not many questions except for his body. But his style of play, it's not that worrisome that he's, spaghetti thin. And like, he doesn't have that, like, yeah, maybe he's not going to be a dominant post player, but that's not the type of game he plays. And so based on his style, I'm just not too worried about him having a thin frame. I
know you might not be at the stage yet in this whole process where you're like really talking a lot to teams about what they're thinking, but I mean, I don't think teams do this anymore where they're like, oh, well, Joel Embiid exists, so we, have to demerit this guy because he's whatever he is, 180 pounds or something ridiculous. Like, let me put it this way. How concerned do you think, I shouldn't even say teams, like, because it's only going to be 1 or 2 teams that are going to have the opportunity to draft him, are going to be when it comes to draft time because of the size, the weight.
So I have Chet at number 1, but I have a mock draft that comes out on Wednesday. I have Jabari going first. Like, I think that the team that wins the lottery is going to take Jabari Smith because I think whoever wins the lottery there's going to be something in the back of that team's mind about like drafting 195-pound big man when you have Jabari, who is a full year younger than Chet, and there is literally like 0 red flags. I mean,
why don't you have him at number 1? I'll ask you
that. I could make the argument. But I think there's just far more upside, I think, with Chet. Not far more upside, but another story, in terms of his ceiling that he can get to. His defensive upside is higher than Jabari's. And I think he can change a game defensively where Jabari can't really do that. But at the same time, we're nitpicking here. I just think that the team that wins the lottery, there's so much pressure to get it right. And I think there's the perception that there's more risk that comes with Chet than there is that comes with Jabari.
Again, I'm learning about all these guys. It's like, I've been trying to pay attention as much attention as I can. Jabari Smith, I mean, is there a comp you could give me? Like, just give me the elevator pitch for Jabari Smith.
Oh man, the elevator pitch. Just go watch this last game. He just put up 27 points. It came in a loss to Tennessee, but like, he's one of the youngest players in the country, and he is 6'10" and shooting 40% from three, and not just catch and shoot, like fallaways, pull-ups, off balance stuff. Now he's attacking the basket, and I mean, this is his floor. And so it's like, if there's just so much more he can add, and he's still putting up 27 points at his floor. They also rave about him off the floor. Like, he can't score a better grade character-wise. So he's going to crush those interviews. And again, if you just look at the eye test of him shooting, it's unbelievable. And the fluidity that he does with at 6'10". I mean, there's going to be like Durant comparisons. I actually think he's more of like a Jaren Jackson player.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But a lot more shake and bake and fluidity around the perimeter. But that was kind of the comparison I had coming in with Jaron Jackson. I didn't think he'd be this sharp, creating his own shot in the half court away from the basket. It's
Jabari, you mean?
Jabari,
okay. Yeah. It sounds like, I know coming into the year, I don't know if you did, but I know some people had Paolo Banchero, who we haven't mentioned yet. He's, obviously the kid at Duke, who I swear every time I read something about him, I'm like, the picture of Julius Randle's smiling mug just pops up in the back of my mind just a little bit.
It's a good call. I mean, that would
is it really?
That would. I mean, they have different body types, but it's not a bad comparison, at least in terms of like who he's going to be in the league. He's going to be a playmaking, scoring power forward who probably doesn't offer much defensively. Takes a lot of mid-range shots, and I know obviously Randle has not been nearly as effective in the mid-range this year as he was last year.
No, not quite.
but that's his office. His office is like the elbows, and he's very good from there. I have him ranked third or fourth just because of the risk again that comes with a guy who loves that area of the floor and isn't as dangerous from three, but. Paolo is a better three-point shooter than Julius was at the same age. And Paolo actually hit 4 threes over the weekend in a game. And Randle had some flashes of playmaking, but Paolo's been more consistent with his passing.
Okay.
I'm talking about at the same age. So, I mean, I don't have many problems with Paolo. It's just that one thing that's a little bothersome with how much he loves that mid-range game, but he's very good at it. The reason I bring him up is it sounds like there's a pretty solid top 2 here. Do you expect that to change at all? I mean, I think, there's the 3 big guys who we just mentioned, Chet, Jabari, and Paolo. And then I think Jaden Ivey is potentially top 3, depending on how the order plays out. I know scouts who think that Ivey has the Ja Morant star power, and the explosiveness that he has just fuels that star upside. And so depending on how it plays out and eye of the beholder, Jaden Ivey could go 2, but I think it's most realistic to think that he goes 4. And then after that, I think there's a gap between 4 and 5. You could name a handful of guys, but I think that's the top 4. And I bet money that's how it plays out.
So let's stick with the 4 for a second. Sometimes I feel like in drafts, or at least based on the reporting, because God knows I don't know this stuff, that you get a guy or you get a couple guys where, a team is going to demand the moon and the sun and the stars for somebody to trade up. Do you envision this being a draft where, if a team gets whether it's a top 2 pick, that a team that gets that pick is really going to hold on to it and demand, more than another team's going to be willing to pay, basically, to jump up and get someone? Yeah,
I think in this draft, and this kind of surprised me, but I really like the top of the board. And unfortunately for Knicks fans, I don't love the late lottery portion of the board. At least my level of confidence isn't super high on any of those guys, being a star. But I think the top 4 guys in this draft have that star potential, and that's really where you want to land. And if you get up in that top 4, obviously there are going to be plenty of phone calls made trying to get in there, and I think the price is going to be high.
So before we get to the depression portion of the program, let's talk about Jaden Ivey for a second. I think he's the guy that a lot of Knicks fans have fallen in love with, and rightly so, because it's a team that hasn't had a guard like this. I mean, I don't even want to say Stephon Marbury was. I don't know. He was unique. Certainly had a lot of ability. It didn't really translate here to wins. But Jaden Ivey is to make sure he's a shooting guard, right? He's not a point guard.
I know that there are some who believe he can transition to point. I don't think that's the right way to use him. I think.
What is he at the next level in your eyes?
He's like the definition of a combo, but I think you're better off with a guy who can run the team better playing alongside of him. Like there are going to be nights where he gets you 7 assists, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's your lead decision maker. I think his calling card, like his money maker, is just blowing by guys and transition and pick and roll sets. And when you can put yourself in that position to blow by guys, naturally you're going to be in playmaking position. And I think he's developed enough passing IQ where he can take advantage of that, capitalize as a passer and playmaker. But again, he's not the guy. I don't think you want him running your offense and bringing the ball up. You can use him in so many different ways. I think of him more as like a Swiss Army knife guard, again, than like your lead facilitator.
Would you have any concerns with again, it sounds like the top 4 is pretty rock solid. Would you have fit concerns with like certain teams or like fitting, like for instance, like RJ Barrett is here. Like we're seeing RJ Barrett develop. He's the closest thing the Knicks have to a cornerstone piece. I think he is a cornerstone piece for them moving forward. Like he seems like a fairly easy guy to play with for the most part. Like would you have can you picture Jaden Ivey and him on the same team?
If you're the Knicks and you're worrying about fit with Jaden Ivey, there's something wrong with that.
Got it.
He is the best player available if they can get him. Assuming they can't get the other 3 bigs, they're too far away to worry about that. And also, I think Barrett is pretty interchangeable at the wing. He could play the 3. He could probably play the 4 against some teams with how strong he is and can get. And listen, Ivy can play some point. He can play some 2. Another guy you can move around. But they shouldn't be worrying about whether or not Ivy fits with Barrett. He's too good.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So that's the top 4. Again, as of your last big board that you had come out a few weeks ago, you had AJ Griffin, another Dookie. You had back-to-back Dookies at 4 and 5 with Banchero and Griffin. Griffin he's kind of moved up boards throughout the season. Is that correct?
Honestly, he's in the same spot as he started, but I've been on Griffin for a couple years now. For example,
so you're high on him then?
Yeah, I'm high on him. I've been high on him since he was probably 16 years old, and he played for USA U16 team. So there's plenty of tape on him. He's been around, even though he didn't play last year. He had a leg injury, and so he hadn't played in a while. And I think that's why maybe some teams or other media outlets have been down on him and questioned him. Like earlier this year, he was 42 on ESPN's board. So, I mean, I think he started the year 7 for me.
Okay.
And now he's 5 or 6. But this was a guy who I wrote an article 2 years ago talking about the best high school prospects. And in 2020, I think I wrote about AJ Griffin being a potential number one overall candidate in 2022. So
wow,
that's the type of upside his game showed at that age. I'd say I probably got a little too excited with that. I think I've learned that he's not as athletic as I thought he might be.
Okay.
But he's 6'6", 222. He's shooting like 45% from 3. And he's just got this terrific frame for defense. I question a little bit his off the dribble game and can he create his own shot in the half court? But between his shooting and his physical tools, and also a guy who's still 18 years old, there's just such a high floor that any improvement is just total bonus for a wing who could probably play 3-4, guard 3 positions, and again, shoot with great accuracy.
It sounds like this is another one of these guys where it's like 3-and-D is the floor, and then if the shot creation comes along, that's okay. So that would be pretty exciting.
And he gives you those glimpses of like tough fallaways and pull up shooting. He's a very accurate pull up shooter. He just doesn't do it with like a ton of speed and explosiveness. So you question how well it'll translate.
Yeah.
But again, you're nitpicking here. I think between his body type and shot making, like it's number 5 with his floor, sure.
If you had to bet on it right now, do you think he winds up being the first guy picked after that top 4?
He's in the conversation. Would I bet on it? I probably wouldn't do it with a ton of confidence, but there's going to be like, 3 or 4 guys you're looking at there. Johnny Davis from Wisconsin is going to be there. Keegan Murray from Iowa, who's averaging like 24 a game. And again, it's eye of the beholder at this point, and possibly fit as a tiebreaker depending on who's picking there. But yeah, he'll be one of the main names talked about at number 5.
So a name you did mention, and I just thought of it because you talked about how much tape there is out there on AJ Griffin, is a guy there's not that much tape out there on, and that's am I pronouncing his name is Shaedon Sharpe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you. So what's the deal with Shaedon Sharpe? What's going on with this young man right now?
Yeah. So he enrolled early at Kentucky, and everyone just assumed that he would, just practice with the team. And then he'd come back next year and be the star of the team. He was number 1 recruit by ESPN, number 2 by 247 Sports, I think, number 2. But
in a good class, right?
Yes, good class. He had a monster EYBL session. He led it in scoring. And again, then we find out that he's going to be eligible for this draft. And so he hasn't come out and said he's declaring, but like if he goes through the draft process, teams are going to tell him you're going top 10. I mean, if you're every number 1 recruit goes top 10, even if he doesn't play, ride the mystery wave. Like somebody's going to want to take a chance, especially like I said, because I don't think that there are a ton of sure things after the top 4. And so he's 6'6", incredible athlete in terms of bounce. Like he does some wild things around the rim, but he's also a very advanced shot maker, pull-up game, step-back game, deep shooting range. And so again, another guy that just has that high floor based on the shot making athleticism. And then I think the question that I have, because I haven't seen him in a while, is that in-between game. How efficient is he going to be getting to the basket, creating his own shot, and against a set defense. But I think for an 18-year-old with his bounce and shot making, like you take the chance that early.
Is this like a Jalen Green type of situation where it's like that? Is it similar questions about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Green, there was so much film on Green. Like Green played everywhere.
Yeah.
USA and just he was very visible in high school. And Sharpe was a little more of a late bloomer.
Okay.
And so there's just like you said, not as much tape on him. So you want to make sure that the high points in EYBL weren't just like, a hot streak. They weren't just fluky, takeover, like a week or 2 of takeover offense. But the eye test was pretty convincing. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's going to go top 10, even if he never suits up.
You mentioned Johnny Davis. He's the one guy I probably know the least about in the top 10. Could you give me the elevator pitch on Johnny Davis? Who is he? What's his deal? I
mean, he came out of nowhere. I mean, he was like 6 points a game last year. He played for USA U19 team this summer. He was a non-factor. And I don't know, just clicked early in the season. And he's 6'5", score, like just the definition of a scorer, but also very tough defensively. He's another intense guy, 3-level guy. He'll get you 10 baskets and each one will look different.
Okay.
He's not a high volume 3-point shooter. I think that's a little bit of a question mark. He's also like really high usage, maybe like over 30% usage rate. So he's got every opportunity in the world to put up, a ton of production in Wisconsin, which he does. But he's already had like 6 games where he's taken over down the stretch and put the team on his back. And in one game single-handedly, which is like a really cool thing. And he's got the intangibles, the competitiveness all checks out. I think with him is the 3-point shot real? And then, it's hard to assess him athletically. Like sometimes he has these unbelievably explosive drives with his left hand, and then sometimes he can't create separation for himself. So I think the jury's still out on how good of a shot creator he's going to be at the NBA level.
Okay.
But between his production, his body, his competitiveness, the improvement he's shown from year 1 to year 2, and his impact, I mean, he's a National Player of the Year candidate. So I think he checks too many boxes for teams to nitpick at. He's a lock to go somewhere in that 5 to 10 range.
Okay.
Right in the Knicks territory as we speak now.
Okay. Which, it sounds like that. Again, you do a good job of selling these guys. I got to tell you, man, how someone hasn't hired you as their hype man. Okay. I've been saving, I don't know if I'm saving the best for last, but I've been saving, like, if you want to talk about a guy who, may check some boxes that interest the Knicks, Kentucky point guard, TyTy Washington Jr. Is this the answer to the Knicks point guard woes that have existed for the last, I don't know how many decades it's been now?
Probably not, but I can really vision him on the team. I mean, obviously the Kentucky connection, but he's right. He falls, again, another guy who's probably going to go late lottery. And he makes a ton of sense based on what he can give him. I think he's a guy, and some question this, but I believe that he is a guy who can be a full-time point guard.
Okay.
But he also has the versatility to play the two. I mean, he's just very complete, very well-rounded player. It's tough to find one really hole in his game other than his athleticism.
I was about to say, it's just the athleticism, right?
Which makes you question what's going to translate skill-wise. Does he have that burst to beat guys and finish around the basket? But he's shooting incredible percentages from every level of the floor, from three, from mid-range with his pull-up, with his floaters. Got one of the best floaters in the draft. He's very efficient around the basket. He's got a great assist-to-turnover ratio. Like, stat-wise and skill-wise, he's not missing much. It's just the athletic questions. But to me, in that late lottery portion of the draft, based on who else is left, I think he's a worthwhile pick, and particularly for a team that could use another creator and shot maker. So,
like, me not being anywhere close to an expert at this stuff, I hear what you just said, and I'm like, well, aren't those the reasons that Tyrese Halliburton fell in the draft? Like, might this be a similar situation where it's just like, get the good basketball player on your team and don't worry as much about what he can't do? Or do you have, more concerns here with TyTy?
I mean, I think they're a little bit different players, but I agree. I've over the years, I put less stock into athleticism, particularly for guards. Like, I'll take the high skill guy over the explosive guy who struggles to shoot or can't get his own shot with ball handling moves. Okay. But yeah, again, he's also a year older than most people in his class. That's a con on the scouting report. But I'm good. I'm higher on TyTy than I think most I've spoken to around the league.
Oh, interesting.
Again, I think he's just so well-rounded that he's going to find ways to compensate for the fact that he probably is not going to get you a ton of dunks.
Okay. Well, listen, we have other players who could dunk. We have Mitchell Robinson. He might be leading the league in dunks for all I know. I haven't checked that stat in a while. Before I let you go, give me one guy who you have your eye on as potentially, I don't know, maybe like as a movement guy, maybe jumping up into the top 10, who's like not there, like maybe someone you're like, if this guy has a good tournament. Is there anybody out there like that, or just, someone who we haven't talked about that you find interesting even?
Yeah, I really like Kendal Brown from Baylor, who numbers wise, they're not going to jump out at you. Not really a big shot creator for a wing, which of course you like, but he's maybe, one of the best athletes in the draft in terms of speed and bounce. And he just impacts the game frequently without having to dominate the ball or take a lot of dribbles or make a lot of shots. Like, he just finds ways. He's a quick processor as a passer. He's just,
can he shoot?
It's not a strength. The other day, he pull up three. I mean, the bar is pretty low if I'm quoting one pull up three that he made.
Hey, it's something.
But it's just, I've watched him from high school to now at Baylor, and it's just like every time he's on the floor, good things happen. Okay. And he's one of those guys where, like, a bad game from him doesn't hurt your team. And he doesn't have many bad games because he doesn't put himself into position to make bad decisions or to force bad shots. He just makes those winning plays. And with his athleticism at 6'8", as a wing or a combo forward, really defends multiple positions, gets himself easy baskets, great passer. Like, he's just one of those guys that you want as the five guys on the floor. And I think some team is going to recognize that as Baylor makes a run in March. And again, he's, traditionally you don't love wings who aren't creators or shooters, but I think he's more of an outlier type prospect who is going to win some guys over.
This sounds like exactly the type of player that like every Knicks fan has wanted the team to draft for like a million years. And they instead will draft the Kevin Knox of this draft, which is who's the Kevin Knox? We'll leave you on this. Who's the Kevin Knox of this draft, Jonathan?
Oh my God. You're putting me on the spot here.
I am putting you on the spot. I feel bad.
Patrick Baldwin from Milwaukee, who is just also 6'10" shooter who like looks great in an empty gym, but in the half court, when he's got to like make moves and stuff, it just doesn't work. But
so against the chair, it's good. But
he's going to look great in workouts. But when you put four of the guys in the defense in front of him, it's been bad news in Milwaukee. And I think anybody who knows him, his story, he chose Milwaukee over Duke. To play for his father, and it totally backfired. Like the team just stinks, and everybody loads up on him, and he hasn't figured out what to do. And then he got hurt. And now he's not going to play. But he was somebody. I had top 10 coming in, and now I think he's probably late first round.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, sorry, Patrick, you got the Kevin Knox kiss of death. Jonathan, you're amazing. Like I said, I hope we. As is our tradition now at this point, could have you on, before the draft. But in the meantime, can you tell folks at home where they can find you and your stuff?
NBA Draft Was on Twitter. We got a mock draft coming out on Wednesday. And, as we move into March, the draft talk picks up, and especially in New York, if nothing really changes.
This is the time of year to start putting Was on notifications. I have you on notifications all the time because I just like when you tweet stuff out, especially your occasional Quentin Grimes praising tweets. It's someone I didn't ask you about because it's Quentin Grimes. He's awesome. We don't need to talk about him. I'm
surprised. I was like, we're ready for some Quentin Grimes talk. And
that's the thing. He's so good. We don't even need to talk about him. He's Quentin Grimes. He just walks on water. I don't know.
A quick note on Grimes. Like I'm pretty sure. Like he's one of those guys where he had such a good NBA combine performance that I think I think that's what sold the Knicks. Like, I mean, he was so good during the NBA combine that I think that was it. Like that's what got him drafted first round.
Whatever it was, I'm happy it got him drafted because he's someone that I'm very excited to watch play basketball for.
Before that, I wouldn't have had him anywhere close to the first round, to be honest.
Really? Okay. You think it was a good pick?
I do now. I mean, at the time, I was never a huge Grimes guy, and you watch him at the combine, which I always put stock into those combine scrimmages because it's just. Such
you really?
I do.
Because I know like not a lot of people, or some people don't have that stance.
I do. I think it means something when you could play with other guys who you never played with, and really show out in front of NBA scouts, and with. You're playing against, 5 NBA prospects and to show out like the way Grimes did, like he just was like the clear winner from the event, and it's totally carried over.
Well, let's hope it keeps carrying over, and let's hope for some lottery luck for the first time in forever. Thanks, man. You are awesome.
All right, J-Mac. Appreciate it.